Morning, everyone. Thank you for coming into our 2023 data conference. Um, Today, Ching and I will presenting a topic about unlocking insight through the comparisons. So I will let Ching to drive for our agenda today. Go ahead, Ching.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ching Song. I'm a data analyst working at Action Lab. I have been working at ASU for over 10 years and have joined AdPlus for about 3 years. Tell me.
And my name is Helmi Alexia. I'm a part of the AdPlus Action Lab. I work for ETL analyst team. And last August 16 was my first year anniversary full time from contractor. So
For our today's agenda, firstly, a brief introduction of the importance of data comparison across different reports. Next, we will provide an overview of the step-by-step process for data comparison. Following that, Helmi will introduce various analytics tools and techniques used in the process of data comparison. And then the best practices for successful data comparison will be presented. Lastly, we will conclude with a Q&A session. Okay, let's start. The significance of data comparison. First of all, address inquiries. As a data analyst, one of my primary responsibilities is creating dashboards and reports for our stakeholders. You won't believe the common question I get. Hey, Ching, I noticed a discrepancy in the number of students between your report and the other report. Can you help clarify this? This is where data comparison comes in handy. It helps us strengthen out the differences between various report or dashboards. Number two, quality improvement. So when we compare the numbers in report A with report B, it's not just about numbers. We dive into both reports to really understand them. It's like fine-tuning. We review the logic and the definitions, spot what we missed, and figure out ways to do better. Enhance decision-making and building trust. We are not just creating reports. By doing data comparison constantly, we are all about accuracy and trust. People count on us for reliable data. This trust helps stakeholders make smarter decisions based on the solid information. It's like building a database culture across the board. Next, we will dive into the steps for data comparison. Imagine we develop a report, report A, and there is another report, report B, with similar data. We want to compare the numbers in both reports and explain any differences we found. First of all, when we compare data, the initial step to me is identifying key metrics and data points we are checking across both dashboards or reports. Their definitions need to be clear and agreed upon by everyone involved. Let's illustrate with examples. In report A, it shows a list of courses, the number of students in each course, and some numbers reflect their grades. In the existing report, report B, it also displays a list of courses, the number of sections provided for each course, student enrollment, and percentage of grades. We will pinpoint the main metrics for comparison. For example, let's focus on the number of enrolled students. But wait, what is the definition of enrolled students in both reports? Does it reflect census snapshot data or current data. Getting everyone to agree on these definitions is crucial before we move forward. Once we're clear on our definitions, the next step is the initial comparison. Depend on the volume of data, you can use your preferred analytics tools to begin data comparison. If you are dealing with just a few numbers, it tends to be a swift and straightforward task. Let's say we pick a specific course, like CAS 105, for the term Spring 2022. In this scenario, report A shows 1516 student, and report B shows 1499. There is a 17 student difference, about 1% of total. But is this 1% difference acceptable? It depends on our target. Are we aiming for 100% match? Or if the difference is within a specific percentage range, that will be fine. If we're okay with 1% difference, then we have hit our goal. If we are aiming for smaller difference, let's say 0.01 percentage difference, or aiming for perfect match, there's more work ahead. We will need to dive deeper into the data sources, check the logic used, and perform detailed comparative analysis using analytics tools. Helmi will introduce this in more details shortly. Adjustments might be needed in our SQL queries and the logic of the reports. We will also create a baseline measurement to share with our stakeholders. After these steps, we will recheck for discrepancies. Ideally, the gap should be smaller than the initial comparison. Do we meet the target? If not, it's back to the drawing board. We will review the details, check if there's any missed factors, until we are satisfied with the comparison result. At this stage, we should understand the data sources, the calculations, and the reasons behind the differences in both reports. The final step is ensuring we can explain these differences during the comparison process. Documentation is the key. Record all findings, insights, and the differences during the comparison. Share these results with stakeholders and the team, ensuring everyone's on the same page. Next, I will pass on to Helmi to talk about how we use analytics tools during the data comparison process.
Thank you, Ching. So let me share. All right, so in this analytic tools for effective comparison segment, I'm going to walk you through how to do the data comparisons using 3 tools: Alteryx, Amazon Redshift, and Python with the Jupyter Notebook. So I'm providing 3 scenarios, actually 4 scenarios on each tool on different 2 targets. So Ching mentioned earlier we have 2 target X%. One is the goal discrepancy is greater than less than or equal to target X%, and the second one is the discrepancy greater than target X%. So question is why we need to set target X% when we do data comparison? Why not 100% match? There are a couple of reasons why the company or the stakeholder set up the X% as a target goal level. Number one is to tolerance for the error. When comparing data, it is crucial to align with the organization tolerance for the errors or discrepancy. The different application and industry have varying requirements. For instance, financial system demand extremely low error rates, while other scenarios might allow for more leniency. Setting a target X% discrepancy helps to define the acceptable margin of error specific to your context. And then second is the efficiency. So requiring 100% match in the data comparison can be impractically and resources intensive, particularly when dealing with a large data sets. This inflexible approach means every data point must be the exact match, which might not be achievable due to data nature variation on the minor discrepancy. So setting up a goal for the acceptable level of discrepancy in data comparisons using the X target, could be 2%, 5%, can be a good practice in the certain situations. But it will depend, again, on the context and the specific goal from the stakeholders. So let's dive into the first tool, Alteryx. I think most of you already familiar with Alteryx. Alteryx is a popular data analytics and data preparation tools. And to me, this tool allow user to connect to different data sources, databases. So in this exercise, the data source I'm using is a SQL Server. So you will see how I talk about Alteryx and also mention the SQL Server at the same time. Just to add some clarification, what's the difference between SQL query and workflow? SQL query is a statement that live in the SQL Server, while Alteryx workflow is a series of interconnected tasks, steps, or process designed to achieve a specific goal or to complete a specific job. So the first best practice steps when doing the data comparisons using the Alteryx is to review the workflow. When we review the workflow, we learn to understand how the workflow structure. We get familiar with the overall structure, we learn to understand how the data flow through the various tools. And if you come across with a complex workflow, my recommendation is to break them into pieces, so it's easy to narrow down the comparison. Understanding the workflow structure, which including the understanding the function and purpose of the Alteryx tool, very important when providing the data comparison, which allow us to prepare and integrate data effectively, ensuring that our comparisons are accurate, reliable, and meaningful. And we heard about interview on the first day that meaningful data is very important for a company. So I will benefit ChatGPT or visit the Alteryx community. They provide a lot of data dictionary tools if you're not familiar with the functions. Understanding the workflow structure also allow us to dive deep into the understanding about data transformations. We review the data transformation step in the workflow, that's including data cleaning, filtering, aggregation, and other transformation process. So understanding the workflow timing is very important. That's the second part, data transformation. The third part is understanding the scheduling. why it's very important when we do the data comparison to understand the timing. Knowing the timing execution is very important because for the data consistency, timing can be affect the consistency of the data we are comparing. For example, if one set of data was retrieved at a different time or under different condition than the other, it might contain changes or updates that could lead to discrepancy outside the target X% goal. Data volatility, some data sets are more volatile than others. For example, transactional data in the database is constantly changing, while reference data might change less frequently. The last one is versioning. In some cases, data might be versioned or timestamp. Understanding the timing of the data retrieval allow us to compare the data at the specific point in time, which can be essentially for tracking changes or auditing the purposes. Okay, so we talk about those three best practices: understand the workflow structure, understand the workflow data transformations, and understand when the workflow executed, which is a schedule. Now we are able to create a baseline measurement for our data comparison. So for this exercise, assuming that we have a current workflow that we need to convert to a SQL query for some reason. So we have to write SQL query based on the workflow process. So we know how to understand how the workflow structure, we know how the workflow transformations, also scheduling, and now we are able to try and convert that process into a SQL query. So on that screenshot in the green box on the top section, that is the current Alteryx workflow. And below that small box on the right, that is the input data that has a SQL query that written based on that Alteryx workflow. So assuming our X% target is 0%. Why 0%? Because so we are doing a project to convert a workflow. We have to have 100% match because we are using the same database, same schema, data sources, data type, and etc. There is no logic being changed or updated. So as you can see that I got 100% match. So that is telling me that my data comparisons met the goal target, which is the discrepancy less than or equal to target X%. Let's say we set the X% is 2%, but in this scenario, like we need to have the 100% match. So that was the Alteryx. The second tool is Amazon Redshift, the SQL query platform. SQL query a bit different than previous Alteryx workflow comparison. So at least 3 best practices that we need to do to be able to successfully to get best outcome of data comparison before we create baseline measurement. Number 1, the process comprehending how SQL queries operate, including their logic, their behavior, is often called query comprehension or understanding the query. Understanding the flow of SQL is very, very important as a key factor when we conducting data comparison. SQL comprehension is crucial when doing data comparison for some reason. Number 1, data retrieval, meaning that we need to understand how the data retrieving within the relational databases and process order, etc. Number 2 is data transformations, meaning that we need to know the data type conversion, calculation, the text manipulation directly within the SQL queries. Good and effective SQL comprehensions, I would say maybe cheap query, also good. is vital and empowers us to extract the right data, perform meaningful comparison, and derive valuable insight for decision making. The second point is we need to know how to identify the data sources. Identifying the correct data sources, like how the relational databases connected, tables, how that view written, what table in that view being used, and what columns, data types, to ensure that we are comparing the right sources. Mismatch or incorrect data sources can lead to inaccurate comparisons and create unsuccessfully of data comparison. Knowing the data source also allow us to determine if the data is relevant to our comparison or not. Unsuccessfully or irrelevant data sources can add complexity and confusion to the comparison process and create unsuccessfully effective data comparison. And able to identify the correct data sources can create data standardization, which drive to the good foundation for accuracy, consistency, and meaningful comparison. All right. So we talk about those best practices before we dive in to create a baseline measurement. For this exercise, as an example, I created CTE. So we are comparing two SQL query set. So using CTE, I created two sets, and to compare the SQL number 1 and SQL number 2. CTE or common table expressions are good practice when writing in SQL, especially for improving code readability, reusability, and managing complex query. However, it's important to keep in mind that overusing CTE or nesting them too deeply can be a negative impact on query performance. All right, so just for fun, right? In this Redshift, Amazon Redshift, I'm going to create two baseline measurement. One's using Alteryx, and the other one's that achieve that in the SQL query using the CTE. So on the screen, I have two set of query. The query number 1 is on the top, has the input data. So inside has the connection databases, and we can write a query in there. So I have the query number 1 on the top, and then query number 2 below that. So there are two input tools. And then I added a new columns. Once I have the input tools, I added a new columns in that red circle to process my matchings on each row and each column of the data set. Very simple formula. I'll say like if count on executive equal to count high impact, then give me Y, else is N or no, and if. Basically, this new column will help me to identify if the data match on each row and each column. So again, assuming that our X target percent in this exercise is 2%, right? And we can see that the end result in this example showing me that matching column identify as a yes, meaning like all of them, they are matched. So that result set give us a conclusion that our data comparisons meet the target goal, which is the discrepancy less than or equal to target X%. The second baseline measurements, we can achieve that within the SQL query. As I mentioned earlier, I created CTE. I added two last columns. I call it baseline measurement and percent the difference. to get that percent of the data comparison result between the two set of query. And again, assuming that in this exercise our target X% is X% is 2 from the baseline measurement, and then the result set indicated that we have all records match with one not match, and the difference is 1.86%, which reach our target goal again. Discrepancy less than or equal to target X%. All right, so we talk about Alteryx, we talk about the SQL. Now the last tool is using the Python. Whether we need to compare data from different sources, perform data validation, or analyze large data sets, Python offers necessary tools, extensive libraries, and flexible to help us to build efficiency and effective data comparison solutions. So in this screen here, I'm using two Python's library. Let's see here. Number one is PyODBZ. That library will help us to set the ODBC connections because in this exercise I'm using SQL query. And the second library is Pandas, which will help. It's an open source Python library that provide data structures and data analysis tool for working with structured data. So once my connection created established, then I can simply query my SQL tables in that Jupyter notebook using Python. So again, assuming in this exercise our target X% is 2, so our target goal is 2%, and from line 17 and 18, using the Python script as shown, we can see that the end result set like 5.28% not matching percentage. Yeah, so that telling us that our data comparison fail. We are not meeting our goal because the discrepancy greater than target 2%. So Ching mentioned earlier, we have the flow chart where if our data comparisons fail, meaning not meeting our target goal, which mean our discrepancy is greater than target X%, we need to return to our initial process again, and then review and drill down the detail and to just kind of like to catch which row, what data that make our target goals not matching. Now with all the exercise, comparison, baseline measurement, and all the findings, now we have a lot of stories to tell. We should be able to tell the story about what's the background of the data comparison, describe all the data sources, how the comparison, and identify the key findings, as well as providing some recommendation. So we can change that those stories as a good data comparison report. There's one recommendations I personally like this: a sign-off. A sign-off document serves as a formal acknowledgement by stakeholders that they have reviewed and accepted the finding and recommendation presented in the baseline assessment. To me, it helps to establish accountability as signatures are indicating that their commitment to take necessary actions based on the assessment finding. So we have briefly learned what are the best practices when doing the data comparisons using 3 different tools: Alteryx, Amazon Redshift, and Python. To produce the different measurement. And I believe there are tons of great tools out there that can achieve the same outcome. But the question is, how do we describe an effective of data comparison? is that having a good tools, expensive tools? That could be yes or no. So I think the best description and how to describe if we are effectively doing the comparison is ultimately depends on how we handle the data quality, our understanding the data, and how well we benefit the available tools and technique, as well as the specific requirements of the analysis, and come up with some good recommendations. Great tools, expensive tool is good, but sometimes tools can create complexity. If you like automation can create the complexity if we don't have an option to go back. Like really deep automation will create complexity. So a good and effective data comparison drive and improve the data of meaningful data for the stakeholders. So for the next agenda, I'm going to hand it back to Ching, so she will conclude our closing of these presentations. Go ahead, Ching.
Helmi just walk us through several analytics tools, and he provided some awesome best practices. Now let's wrap it up with a quick summary of the best practices for comparing data between different reports. First of all, get the full picture. Before diving into the nitty-gritty, it's crucial to really understand both reports and what needs validating, knowing the exact requirements and our target. Whether it requires a 100% match or a small discrepancy is acceptable. This will help us precisely assess how well the data aligns. Number two, speak the same language. Let's standardize our definitions. Different dashboards might define things differently. Take enrollment, for instance. One might consider it from a census, while the other one counted as of now. Same goes for the term like successful pass. Is it referred to student with a grade of ABC or something else? Ensuring these terms match up helps accurate comparisons. Keep it consistent. We need to check the refresh schedule for both reports and their data sources. If one, let's say dashboard, refreshes daily in the morning and the other one refreshes at night, or the other dashboard doesn't automatically refresh, this can lead to outdated or conflicting information. We will also ensure the logic and calculations for similar data points stay consistent across all reports. Next, match the granularity. We are talking about granularity alignment. If one dashboard breaks down students by term and the other one by academic year, we might see numbers not adding up. We will tweak and adjust to make sure they are comparing apples to apples, maintaining the same level of detail for fair comparison. Document and explain. Every difference counts. As Helmi just mentioned, we will jot down any discrepancies we notice, making clear notes or comments to explain why these differences exist between the reports. Consider adding footnotes in your dashboard, adding comments in the workflow or SQL query, creating a separate slide deck to share. This will help dashboard users or the team members have a better understanding of the product and eliminate confusion. This way, we will have a solid understanding of the nuances and the differences between the reports, making our comparison more accurate and reliable. That's all for our presentation.
So our next session is Q&A. That stands for Ask Ching, and she will get your answer, not me. Any questions? I hope we learn something. So welcome if you have questions. Ching will help you to answer, not me.
Or if you have any experience you want to share, that will be great.
Yeah. Yes. Right. Correct. So let me draw back to here, right here. So yeah, in Alteryx, the good thing about Alteryx, but that take more works. But I think Alteryx is good because you can create a macro, right? Just imagine Excel. Excel create macros if you wanna do the same action to do comparisons. So in Alteryx, there's a tools, a formula that will allow you to create a new columns, so you can do a matching column by columns. Because in this exercise, I have two set of query. Imagine only three columns: ABC set 1 and ABC set 2. So with this simple example, I pull the formula data tools, and I create a new columns. Then I use the if statement, and that if statement can be complex. You can add more stuff, but simply just hey, tell me I want to match the column A set 1 with the column A on the set 2. If they are matched, tell me yes. If not, else, or like no. So that's kind of like simple process, but you can add more. So the reason I said Alteryx can create a macro if you have the same data sets. Let's say every month for the compliance, you need to provide the data comparison, right? And you can convert that process in Alteryx as a macro. So macro, and then that will allow you to pull a new data set. And again, like if you attend to yesterday topic, one of our teammates, Emily and Ralph, they talk about the Alteryx. So again, I like Alteryx, but every tool has a plus and minus. But Alteryx can achieve a great baseline measurement process. Sorry, I hope I answered your question. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. A good question. Very good questions. I guess it's go back to this. Oh, Ching, sorry. I will answer, and later I will let you to add. But to me, the X% is the agreement. Let's say I have a stakeholders, or let's say I have a different team that they wanna pull, create a dashboard, right, and from different sources. But they say, well, we insert the same data set from previous servers. We're expecting very close, but again, to answer that question, a numbers, just a numbers. I guess once the data comparisons completed, and then I'm assuming there will be more revised target goals. I guess the X% is just a numbers that the agreement from the stakeholders. Ching, you want to add that, Ching, for that question, Ching?
Helmi, sorry, I didn't hear about the question. I think it's too
Okay.
far from the microphone. So could
Okay.
you repeat?
Yeah. Let me pass this microphone to you.
Feel fancy with a microphone now. So the question was in regard to the target X and how you're kind of determining that. So this answer was helpful in terms of it's an agreement with the stakeholder, but can you give us some kind of practical advice as to how you're coming up with that number with the stakeholder? Are you having numerous conversations, explaining things? In my experience, the stakeholder usually just says it's not the same, and there's not really a technical understanding of how it could be different. So how are you kind of helping to move that agreement along?
Good question. I think to me, it really depends. It depends on what's the project you are doing. For example, if the two reports you are comparing against using the same data sources, to me, we are expecting that the numbers would align between the two reports because the same sources are using. Or if we are transform from one system to the other, we also expect that the differences would be very minor. However, if after we look into the details of the two reports and we find that they're using different sources, or we notice that they have different refresh date, I think this could explain why the discrepancies are bigger. So yeah, I think that depends.
Yeah, and maybe I can add like so earlier I mentioned about the we have the project, we converting a workflow into a SQL query as a view. We're pulling from the same data sources, same tables, same columns, same schema. There's no logic change. So, but converting from Alteryx to SQL, Alteryx and SQL, they speak different language. Like joining, or like for example, join, left join, and it's very easy to do in SQL, but in Alteryx, there's confusion. You have to use a union, you have to stack them. And but with that project, the manager expect we have to have 100% match. But the numbers could be from stakeholders, or if the management say, we are not expecting 100% match, but at least like 0.002, for example, because the old server has stopped and the timestamps will not, I mean, the records will not be added to the new server, for example, something like that. So I hope I answered your question, and Ching answered your question as well. Any more questions? Are we good? Thank you, guys.